Wow, so this episode of Demon Slayer was actually a mixed bag of just a lot of different things to sift through. There's a lot of great comedy in this, a lot of great really character building, world building too, especially for the Demon Slayer core, and as well more of Daki. And no, I'm not simping for Daki, you're simping for Daki. Or we can just both simp for her together. I mean, that's fine too. Anyways, let's get on with the video, shall we? So the episode begins with some Koinatsu stuff, and she has kind of like this really interesting story thread throughout this episode that I find quite compelling, in my opinion. I especially love just the little girls, how they look up to her. It really shows that even though Koinatsu, well, we don't actually know her fate, hopefully she is saved, that she is actually like a really valued member in her house. And I think that's a pretty nice touch because it makes what's happening to her that much more, important for the viewer because it gets us emotionally invested in what's going on with her. And I really dig that kind of stuff. It's stuff that I think Ufotable and the people that are working on this series, they're really good at doing, to be honest. But they get word of Zenitsu's appearance, or Zenko, I should say. And by the way, we haven't seen him yet. He didn't show up at all in this episode. So basically, my theory on where he is either he is tied up much like Makio, because that's another person we haven't seen since the last episode is Makio. Daki probably has both of them trapped inside of their threads or tied up wanting to get more information out of them. And as well, based off the dialogue and some of the stuff that Daki was saying in this episode, of course Zenitsu is still alive. He's also one of our main characters, so I don't think he'll be dying anytime soon. But they get word of Zenitsu disappearing, and they think that she has ran away just like all of the others, and the manager gets really angry, throws, is that like one of those old calculators? Is that what those things are? At one of the girls, and that's pretty much the end of the scene. The next scene though is actually rather funny and at the same time very informative, especially for the world building of Demon Slayer. So Inosuke is basically telling Tanjiro that there is a demon at his house. Well, I love Tanjiro's reaction throughout this scene because he's very poorly describing and at the same time very accurately describing, may I add, what Daki is, and Tanjiro is like rather confused. He's like, can you slow down a bit? And I also love later when Inosuke starts hitting Tanjiro. Tanjiro says, can you stop with the slappy slaps? I mean, that just may be my translation that I got, but that was some really funny stuff and I quite enjoyed it. But as they're like agreeing to leave and regroup at a later time until Tengen shows up, well, Tengen shows up pretty much instantly. He is a very sneaky guy, very quick fellow. Tengen talks to them about how he thinks he made a bad choice and basically tells them to run, that if you live, you win, pretty much, which I think I agree with that. If you live, you do win. Living is very fun and it's a very rewarding experience. So I think I agree with his statements just in general though, like actually being serious. Yeah, like if you live and you run, I mean, you live to fight another day, right? And that's the whole mentality behind what Tengen is saying. He's trying to make sure that these two are safe, whereas he may have went a little bit in too deep sending all three of them in with this plan. And it shows that Tengen as well, he cares about his underlings, he cares about the lower ranking Demon Slayer core members, even though all the Demon Slayer core members are kind of psychos in their own ways. This was really a nice way to show Tengen's more softer side, I guess, the side that cares about other people, which I greatly appreciated in this scene and especially this episode. So after the slappy slaps, I think we get like an inadvertent Fate reference, but as well at the same time we get some world building on the ranking of the Demon Slayer core. We learn that Tanjiro and Inosuke and Zenitsu and Kanao are actually all, what is the word they use? I want to make sure I say this correctly. Kanoe rank, which is 4 from the bottom. So they've went up about 3 or 4 ranks since the very beginning of the series, which is actually quite impressive considering the time. I don't know how quickly it is to rank up, but it is rather impressive considering the time that we spent with them in this series. But as well, when they say like a passphrase or a password or whatever, and they flex like their a magic crest shows up, a summoning sign, right? Am I crazy in saying that? I know like this is the same people that did, Fate, so I'm thinking this is a Fate reference, right? Can I say that? At least the way they animated it, I know Demon Slayer Slayer is not from the same writers as Fate, but the way they animated it for sure definitely looked like a summoning sign or a magical crest. That's my opinion though. You put down in the comments below what you think. And this thing is called the Wisteria Bloom Tattoo. Also, it's in the manga called a Wisteria Flower Engraving. So I don't know if that's just different translations there, coming up with different things that are basically meaning the same thing. But yeah, there you go. Pretty interesting, in my opinion. But Tanjiro believes that they must be using a secret passage because Inosuke explains how quick they are dealing with whoever they need to deal with and eat, pretty much. So he's like, well, logically speaking, there's probably a secret passage for them to travel from house to house. This would make sense with the last episode and actually correlates very well because what Inosuke probably experienced was these secret passages. And if that is the case, I wonder if a big part of finding, I guess, Daki later on, maybe if she escapes, is finding those secret passages. Of course, we know that the two, Tanjiro and Daki, have a face-off at the end of this episode, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. But it is some pretty interesting stuff, I think, that they bring up there. I also think it's rather cute where Tanjiro is like, I'm going to act under the belief that Tengen's wives are still alive so that we can save them all. And Inosuke was like, I was about to say the exact same thing. That was, oh man, this show is so funny. The reactions in this show, especially Tanjiro's, are so great. I love them. I have laughed pretty much every single episode of this season so far, and I wasn't finding myself laughing in season 1. So I think they've definitely tuned up the comedy a little bit for this series, and I greatly appreciate that so much because while these episodes are very quick, still, it's very nice to see some of this comedy interspersed throughout these episodes as well, because it is a rather dark series considering especially what the storyline of this is. I mean, we're dealing with courtesans. This is not exactly the happiest job to be in, so I like it. It's cool. It's a nice touch. Then we go to Koinatsu, who is giving these two little girls some like really cool hair pieces, and apparently these are her treasures. And it's very odd, out of character, like why she's doing that, but we learn in this scene that basically she's planning to leave because she was bought, or well, not really bought necessarily, just being taken in by a man who really wants her, which I think is actually rather wholesome. Like, that is a rather neat little, cute little storyline for Koinatsu. She found love. I like that. That just warms the cockles of my heart, to say the least. But Tanjiro goes to Koinatsu and is like, hey, I have to leave. Sorry for all this. Also, by the way, I am actually a man. And Koinatsu is like, yeah, I knew the whole time. Tanjiro's like, what? You knew the whole time? Oh man, such good stuff, such good comedy. This is what I'm talking about. The comedic timing of this series is just so much better than what it was in season 1 and the movie by extension. It is so well thought out comedic timing. I love it. The voice acting in this is also fantastic as well. I think this is just some really good stuff, and I cannot stop singing its praises because it still makes me laugh. But it seems that, well, Koinatsu, she's gonna have different plans, because Daki plans to eat Koinatsu because it turns out that Daki only eats young people, young and pretty people, which I guess she probably believes that if she eats young and pretty people that she will stay young and pretty forever, though I'm pretty sure that demons don't age anyways. But if that is the case, if this is one of those things where she's like, I'm prettier if I eat all the young ones, well, she could literally just change her form, I think. Now that I think about it, do we know if other demons besides Nezuko and Muzan Jackson, do we know that if, they can change their forms yet? I'm not sure. I don't think we've seen another demon in the series change their form quite yet, so it's an interesting thought to think about. Okay, so this next scene is... This next scene also has a lot of world building, and especially just lore building for the Demon Slayer Corps. So, Tanjiro is late meeting Inosuke, and so Inosuke, headlong rush, that's the way he lives, that's his motto, right? So he jumps pierces his head through the top of the ceiling, and he gets muscly mice to bring him his swords. You can't make this up. This was hilarious. So apparently these, going by off what was said in the Taisho secret, these muscly mice are actually very important members of the Demon Slayer Corps. They're like familiars of sorts that are pretty much very specially trained. These familiars in particular are very muscly mice, and they are able to carry one sword apiece, which swords are pretty heavy. Considering that these are mice, you picking these up and breaking them to Inosuke. This was great. I don't know what to say other than that. I like this. I thought this was very good. 10 out of 10. This is rather important though. So Tengen interrogates one of the managers of the house that Warabahime is at, aka Daki, and he pretty much immediately spills the beans, and he vows to basically get revenge against Daki and make right on the wrongs that and the crimes and atrocities that she has committed throughout her life, and basically promises to kill them all that are responsible for what they've done. And he just immediately is like, yeah, it's Daki, it's Warabahime Oran, that's who it is. Go kill her, pretty please. Would very much appreciate if you did, sir. And I agree. I would definitely beg Tengen to be like, please get rid of her. She's frightening. She's very scary. She threatens to murder us all the time. She's a demon. So Tanjiro confronts Daki and they fight. This is like a really good scene. There's like a lot of really cool fighting, and there's a lot of really cool Daki, because Daki's so cool. We love her. We stand Daki here. Like, SeaTactics is a Daki stan channel now. If you want any membership cards for the SeaTactics channel, you can obviously put down in the comments below if you want one, and I will mail one to you as soon as I possibly can. Jesus good lord. So I read the manga after this episode was finished because I wanted to, get context on and get better notes, because that's what I do for Demon Slayer, is I either read the manga first for the 2 chapters that are being covered, or I read them after the episode, whichever one comes first. And basically in the manga, they really adapted this part well. I will say, I'm gonna put it on the screen right now. This pose, whatever this is, they did that pretty well. They did that pretty well. I appreciate that. Besides me thirsting over an anime character, I want to actually be serious for a moment and stop joking. I want to say that is this the first time we saw Nezuko in this season so far? I think it may be. I'm surprised that Tanjiro is like, only come out of the box if you feel like your life is threatened. I feel like, especially against Daki, I would want Nezuko to be out of the box and supporting me. Then again though, Nezuko is typically relegated to these supporting roles where she does pop out of the box and kick somebody's heads off at random intervals to be like the big surprise of a fight or whatever. Also, it is Nezuko. They don't show her often, so at the same time, yeah, maybe it is better to keep her away from Daki for a while and only have those two face off in a later episode, maybe the next episode, who knows? Because there is something to be said about Nezuko being like the surprise character that pops out every now and again and has like a really cool fight scene. Because like, I mean, she played soccer with, what was her name for season 1? I forget her name. It's on the Sawano? Is that a Sawako or something with S, right? Well, either way, great stuff. This scene was quite phenomenal. Apparently we learned that Daki consumes people through her threads. I also kind of like Daki's fighting style as well. She could put multiple layers of threads together to make it harder. I really like that kind of detail in terms of the fighting. Also, like, this fight was also pretty crazy, like, for what it was, even though it was rather short, and it will probably be continued in the next episode. When I'm just assuming, and I'm guessing here, my theory is that Tengen is going to interrupt this, either that or Inosuke, or both? I don't know. We'll see. I hope next episode, though, we get to see one of Tengen's wives. See, that's another thing that could happen, is one of Tengen's wives comes and saves them. That would be really cool to see. Or we get to see what happened to Zenitsu. That would be really cool as well. Either way, this episode was really good. I really enjoyed this episode, from the Daki stuff, of course the Daki stuff, all the way to the stuff with Koinatsu. I thought that was a really nice story thread throughout this episode, a nice little mini arc just for this episode. Really thought that stuff was brilliant. Pacing of this series is extraordinary as always, and the comedy is amazing, and the action is action-packed. Demon Slayer Season 2 so far I'm liking this even more than Demon Slayer Season 1. 4 episodes in, and I know this is just 11 episodes, but this is some really good stuff. That being said, while we wait for next week's episode, please check out last week's video on Demon Slayer. It didn't really get a lot of views, so I would appreciate it if you guys would go out of your way to view this one. As well, my 86 videos are back up. I just today released my video on the final episode of 86 before the next one, so please, as my alarm goes off, go check that out. Bye-bye!